Hey guys, welcome back to 4th grade math. I'm Miss Jimerson from Cypress Point Elementary. Today we're going to be doing Module 1, Lesson 7. All right, so today we're going to be rounding multi-digit numbers to the thousands place using the vertical number line. And I actually stuck one in here that's to the nearest 10,000s place, just as a little challenge problem. But our skill today is just rounding to the thousands place. So let's start with an application problem. It says, according to their pedometers, Miss Alfred's class took a total of 42,619 steps on Tuesday. On Wednesday, they took 10,000 more steps than they did on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, they took 1,000 fewer than they did on Wednesday. How many steps did Miss Alfred's class take on Thursday? So before we can actually get to the Thursday, we need to figure out, we know Tuesday, we need to figure out what Wednesday was in order to figure out Thursday. So let's start here. We've got 42,619 steps on Tuesday. On Wednesday, they took 10,000 more. So if we start here, 42,619 plus 10,000 more. This is going to tell us our total steps for Wednesday. So let's start in the ones place. 9 plus 0 gives us 9. 1 plus 0 gives us 1. 6 plus 0 gives us 6. In the thousands place, 2 plus 0 gives us 2. And then in 4 plus 1 gives us 5. So I'm just going to put a W out here. That equals Wednesday's step. 52,619. Now, it tells us that on Thursday, they took 1,000 fewer steps. So fewer lets us know that we're going to be doing subtraction on that second step. So let's take Wednesday's total, and let's take away 1,000 steps. All right, let's start subtracting in the ones place. 9 minus 0 leaves us 9. 1 minus 0. 6 minus 0 leaves us 6. 2 minus 1 leaves us 1. And then 5 minus 0 leaves us 5. So Miss Alfred's class on Thursday took 51,619 steps. Let's move into our fluency. Okay, so on our place value chart that I've provided for you with the place value discs, we have represented 3 100,000s, excuse me, 5 10,000s, 2,000s, 100, 5 10s, and 4 ones. So we've made a number of 352,154. Now it says, what is 100 more? So if I came to the hundreds place, and I added a place value discs there, I would, instead of having only 100, now I have 200s. So that new number would be 352,254. So all we did there is we changed the hundreds place. All right, next, what is 10,000 less? So if I took away, I'm just going to put an X over it. If I took away a 10,000, then I would have 342,254. Again, all I did was I just put an X over that 10,000th place value disc because I was just taking away a 10,000. All right, and then the last one says, what is 100,000 more? So again, come to the 100,000s place and add 100,000. Now, after all of those steps, our new number would be 442,254. So this is just going back over our previous lessons where we did, using the place value chart, we did more than, and then we did less than. Good job on that review. All right, this is also from the previous lesson to complete the number pattern. So we have 92,010 82,010, 72,010. If you notice, the numbers are getting smaller each time. But I need to figure out what place value is changing each time. So I'm starting with a 9 in the 10,000s place. Next, I have an 8 in the 10,000s place. And then I have a 7 in the 10,000s place. So I know, again, that my numbers are getting smaller, but it's my 10,000s place that is changing. So I went from 92,010, 82,010, 72,010. My next number would be 62,010. So again, that 10,000s place value is what we were changing. All right, guys, one more like that. 135,004, 136,004, 137,004. This time I see that my numbers are going up. Let's figure out which place value was changing. So I started, let's just look in front of that comma. I have 135, 136, and 137. Of those, I see it changed from 5,000s, 6,000s, and 7,000s. So my thousands place is what was changing. Now, if you remember from our last lesson, if it's in front of the place value that's changing, those digits stay the same. So if I'm going to go up from 137,000, I'm going to move up to 138,004. Again, only changing that thousands place value. Okay, this particular skill is called finding the midpoint. So the first question says, what is halfway between 10 and 20? So what I have represented here for you is called a vertical number line. So a vertical number line just goes up and down. This is what we're going to be using to do our rounding. We're going to place some numbers here, and then we're going to figure out where our number that we're trying to round, where it falls on the number line in order to round it. So again, don't let this scare you. This is just a regular number line. You know, we have number lines that go side to side. This one just goes up and down. So the smaller numbers are towards the bottom, larger numbers are towards the top. So let's start with this first question. What's halfway between 10 and 20? So if I took those two numbers, 10 and 20, and if I put 10 at the bottom and 20 at the top, that means I'm not going to be going lower than 10, and I won't be going higher than 20. But I need to figure out this midpoint, or the very middle of those two numbers. So if I'm thinking about 10 and 20, if I was going to count between 10 and 20, I need to figure out what would come right in the middle of those two numbers. So if you're thinking about that, you're going to be 10 at the bottom, 15 would be that midpoint, right? So anything between 10 and 15 on the number line would go in between these two marks, and anything between 16 and 20 would go above that midpoint. All right, let's look at another example. All right, what's halfway between 1,000 and 2,000? So let's look at those two numbers, 1,000 and 2,000. So if I'm going to use my vertical number line, 1,000 is going to be at the bottom. I mean, I'm not going to go below that. And then 2,000 would be at the top. So I need to figure out what would be between 1,000 and 2,000. And I would not want to sit here and just count by ones to try and figure that out. I just need to know what's half of 1,000, because I'm in the thousands place. So what's half of 1,000? Half of 1,000 is going to be 500. So my midpoint, or in between, would be 1,500. That 500 is very important because it's halfway between this 1,000 and that 1,000. And we're going to do some more with that, so let's keep moving on. Okay, rounding to the nearest 1,000. So again, I've got 4,100. I have my vertical number line. So it says, how many thousands are there in 4,100? So in the thousands place, what do I have? I've got that 4,000. So we're going to put the lower end mark, or the lower part, as 4,000. Okay, so I know that my number, if I round it, it cannot go below 4,000 because I only have 4,000s in my number. All right, the next part, what is 1,000 more? I'm only rounding to the nearest thousand. So that means my number line can only go up by 1,000. So if my bottom is 4,000 and I go up another 1,000, that's going to give us 5,000. So now my two end points, or my end marks, are 4,000 and 5,000, meaning it's going to round down to 4,000 or it's going to round up to 5,000. All right, then we need to find our midpoint. Sometimes they call it halfway mark, but this is just called a midpoint. So we need to figure out what's in between 4,000 and 5,000. And we previously talked about in between 1,000 is going to be 500. So in between 4,000 and 5,000 is going to be 4,500. So there's our 3 points. We've got bottom end mark, or end point. We have a midpoint, and then we have our top end mark. Now we need to figure out where we can put 4,100 on this number line. So let's just look here. I know 4,100. That's definitely not going to go at 4,500. That's too much. So I need to think about going lower than 4,500. I only need to be at 100, 4,100. So I would need to come pretty close down here to that 4,000, and I can just write in 4,100. Now I see that 4,100 is below that midpoint, so that means it's going to round down to 4,000. So 4,100 is about 4,000. Now in this example, if our number had been above that midpoint, then it would have rounded up to 5,000. But if it's below the midpoint, it's going to go down to that bottom end mark, or end point. All right, let's look at another one. This one is 14,500 to the nearest thousand. So let's figure out first where we can put 14,000. I know I'm only going to the thousands place, and I know that I've got 14,500. So where can I put that 14,000? That would go as our bottom end point. Okay, if I'm rounding to the nearest thousand and my bottom is 14,000, what can my top be? If I'm going to go up 1,000, my top would be 15,000. So now I know that I'm in between 14,000 and 15,000. And then it says, what is the midway or halfway mark? So we need to figure out what goes in between 14,000 and 15,000. Well, that midpoint would be 14,500. All right, let's keep going. Then it says, is 14,500 closer to the 14,000 or the 15,000? Now this particular one is a little bit different. The 14,500 would fall right here on that midpoint of 14,500. So that is, the midpoint is actually the number that we're rounding. So I need to think now, do you think if it's at the midpoint that it should go up to 15,000? Or do you think that it should go down to 14,000? Well, if it's in the middle, it's going to go up. So this particular number would round to 15,000. So that one's just a little bit tricky, but it would go up. If it's at the midpoint or higher, it's definitely going to round up. All right, the next one, 6,700. So let's think about, we don't have any clues to help us here. So we're just going to be doing this from our memory from those other ones. What is in the thousands place. I've got 6 in the thousands place, and I'm only rounding to the nearest thousand. So my bottom end point is going to be 6,000. I can't go any lower than 6,000. All right, now if my bottom end point is 6,000 and I need to go up 1,000, my top end point is 7,000. So I know that my number falls in between 6,000 and 7,000. One last important part here is to find that midpoint or the midway mark. So I need to figure out what's in between 6,000 and 7,000. So that midpoint is going to be 6,500. Now I need to put my number of 6,700 on my vertical number line. So let's think about where that 6,700 is going to go. I see that my midpoint is 6,500, but my number is 6,700. So do you think that's going to go above the midpoint or below the midpoint? Take a second and just think about where do you think it's going to be on that number line. It's going to be above the midpoint or below the midpoint. Well, I know that my midpoint is only 500. My number is 700. So it needs to be above that midpoint. So I can just fill it in right there. So I see that it's above my midpoint. So 6,700 is about 7,000. It would definitely round up because it's above that midpoint. All right, great job on that. All right, this is the one I told you we were going to try to trick you, or maybe just move a little, extend this a little bit to go 10 thousandths place. All right, so let's look at the 10 thousandths place here. I've got 3 in the 10 thousandths place. So that, if I was looking at the value, that would be 30,000 in that tens place. So if I'm going to round to the 10 thousandths, that's going to be 30,000. Now let's look at the top part of that. If I'm rounding to the 10 thousandths, I need to go up 10,000. So if my bottom is 30,000 and I'm counting by 10 thousandths, my top would be 40,000. And again, this is just an extension. We're just trying to get prepared for our next lesson. Now I need to figure out what would go in between 30,000 and 40,000. So if I'm thinking about counting between 30 and 40, what's right in between 30 and 40? Well, that would be 35,000. All right, you guys, the last thing we have to do is we have to put this 38,988 on the number line. So I see that it's going to definitely be above that 35,000 midpoint. So I just need to come in between the 35 and the 40,000, and I need to put my particular number. Now we're just going to kind of squeeze it in here, 38,988. Now it's above the midpoint, so that means it's going to round up. So it's going to be about 40,000. And again, just trying to extend this particular lesson to prepare for the next lesson, but we will move into that in our next lesson. All right, to wrap this up, let's just review this vertical number line because we will see them again. So when we're using a vertical number line, we need to find the 2 end points first. So we need to find that bottom or the lowest end point, and then we find the top or the highest end point. Second, once you have the end points, then you can find that midpoint. So then you can find what's exactly between those 2 numbers on that vertical number line. And then we're going to place the number that we're rounding on the number line and decide whether it goes up or down. All right, you guys, that's the end of this lesson. I will see you next time. Bye, you guys.